July of 2022, the United Kingdom hit 40 degrees Celsius for the first time in recorded history, 104 Fahrenheit. Gardens across southern England that had thrived for generations turned brown in a single week. The same summer, Phoenix logged 54 consecutive days above 43 degrees, well over 110 Fahrenheit. And Madrid recorded its hottest summer since records began. This isn't a one-off. Across America and Europe, the gardeners I talk to all say the same thing now. The middle of summer used to be the peak of the growing season. Now it's the place where the garden goes to die. If you've watched your spring lettuce bolt overnight, your tomatoes drop their flowers in the heat, your peppers stall, your spinach turn bitter, your cucumbers throw out only male flowers in late July, you've seen it. The problem isn't your gardening. The problem is the crops most of us were taught to grow. Almost every vegetable on the standard seed catalog list was bred for the climate of Northern Europe or the cooler northeastern United States. They were designed for moderate, even temperatures and steady rainfall. When the thermometer pushes above 32 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, those plants stop performing. They shut down. The flowers fall. The roots stop drinking. The leaves curl and the harvest collapses. But there's another list. A quieter one. Crops that come from regions where 40 degrees in July isn't unusual. From West Africa, from the Andes, from the river valleys of India, from the coasts of Australia and southern China. Plants whose ancestors evolved in conditions that would kill a head of romaine in 3 afternoons. These crops don't merely survive brutal heat. They wait for it. They produce their heaviest harvest in the weeks most gardens go quiet. And almost nobody plants them, because the garden center still sells what sold 30 years ago. I want to walk you through 10 of them. Every one of these is genuinely heat-loving. Not heat-tolerant, not handles warm summers. Actually built for the kind of weather that's becoming the new normal across Texas, Arizona, the Carolinas, southern Spain, central Italy, and increasingly across England and Germany as well. Number 1 is okra. If you've spent any time in the American South, you already know okra. If you haven't, this is the plant that taught generations of gardeners that summer wasn't the end of the season. It was the beginning. Okra, Abelmostius esculentus, comes from West Africa, where it's been grown for thousands of years in temperatures that would shut down a tomato. It will not even germinate until soil temperatures are above 21 Celsius, around 70 Fahrenheit. Plant it too early and it sits and sulks. Plant it when the soil is genuinely warm. Late May for most of the US, June for the UK and Northern Europe. And it explodes. The plant grows to 2 meters tall, throws out tropical-looking yellow flowers, and produces pods every 2 or 3 days for months. The hotter the summer, the heavier the harvest. Pick young pods 3 to 4 inches long before they get woody. Fry them, grill them, stew them. Drop them in gumbo. Once you've grown okra through a hot summer, you stop fearing July. Number 2 is eggplant. Aubergine, for European viewers. Solana melongena is native to India, where it was domesticated in conditions that regularly hit 35 Celsius. It belongs to the same family as the pepper and the tomato. But unlike its cousins, eggplant doesn't merely tolerate heat. It accelerates in it. The plants produce their heaviest fruit set when nighttime temperatures stay above 20 Celsius, around the high 60s Fahrenheit. Grow them in a sheltered south-facing spot in containers if your nights are cool, or in open ground if you're somewhere genuinely warm. Varieties like Black Beauty, Rosa Bianca, Listada de Gandia, and the long Asian types perform well. Glossy, heavy fruit hanging from sturdy stems while the rest of the garden gasps. Number 3 is peppers. I covered peppers in depth in another video on overwintering perennials. But they deserve their place here too. Capsicums, from the warm valleys of South America, thrive in the same conditions that destroy lettuce. Bell peppers, jalapenos, cayenne, poblanos. Banana peppers, the long Italian sweet types. Once daytime temperatures sit in the upper 20s Celsius, mid to high 80s Fahrenheit, peppers move into their best production. The sweetness in the bells deepens. The heat in the chilies intensifies. A single pepper plant in a properly warm summer will produce dozens of fruit through the hottest weeks of the year. Number 4 is sweet potato. And this is the crop that turns a brutal summer into the most productive season of your year. Sweet potato is the crop that quietly outperforms almost everything else in a hot summer. Ipomoea. Batatas comes from Central and South America, where it's grown in heat and humidity that would flatten most northern vegetables. Once the soil warms past about 21 Celsius, around 70 Fahrenheit, the vines take off and don't stop until first frost. A single slip, that's a rooted shoot, the same kind you can grow from a supermarket sweet potato, becomes a sprawling vine that covers 4 to 6 square meters of ground by midsummer. Below the soil, 3 to 8 tubers develop on each plant, each one often larger than the original you started with. And here's the part most American and European gardeners don't know. The leaves are edible too. In West Africa, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, and much of the Caribbean, sweet potato greens are a daily summer vegetable. They cook down like spinach, with a milder flavor and a higher nutritional profile than most cultivated greens. You can harvest them all summer while the tubers develop underneath. 2 crops from one plant, both produced in the conditions most other vegetables refuse to work in. If you've got a sunny patch and a long, warm season, this is the plant that will feed you more food per square meter than anything else on this list. Number 5 is yardlong bean, sometimes called asparagus bean or snake bean. Vigna unguiculata subspecies sesquipedalis. This is the climbing bean of tropical Asia, common in Thai, Chinese, and Vietnamese kitchens, and it's almost unheard of in most American and European gardens. That's a real gap because where the ordinary green bean shuts down in heat above 32 Celsius, the yardlong bean speeds up. The pods grow up to half a meter long, hanging from the vine like green ropes. Train them up a trellis, a tomato cage, an old fence, anything 2 meters tall, and they'll cover it. Harvest pods at 30 to 40 centimeters, while they're still slim and tender, before the seeds inside swell. Stir-fry them, blanch them, drop them into curry. Dress them in sesame oil and garlic. The flavor is close to a green bean, but with more texture. The harvest goes on for months in heat that would have finished a bush bean by July. Number 6 is cowpea, also called southern pea, field pea, or black-eyed pea depending on which side of the Atlantic you're standing on. Vigna unguiculata, the same species as the yardlong, but a different variety group. Cowpea is the bean that built Southern American gardens in the era before air conditioning. It comes from West Africa, it laughs at heat, and it tolerates drought better than almost any other legume. It also fixes its own nitrogen, meaning it improves the soil as it grows. Pink eye purple hull, whippoorwill, crowder, California black eye. These are heirloom varieties that have fed families through summers far hotter and drier than anything most of us see today. Plant them after the soil is genuinely warm. Give them a fence or some sticks to climb, and they'll produce pods of mild, sweet peas through the worst of August. They're a real working summer crop, not a curiosity. Number 7 is Armenian cucumber, and the reason this one belongs on the list and the regular cucumber doesn't is genetic. Despite the name, the Armenian cucumber isn't actually a cucumber at all. Cucumis mello flexuosus is botanically a melon. It tastes and looks like a long, ribbed, pale green cucumber, but it's built like a melon. Heat-loving, drought-resistant, and unbothered by the conditions that turn ordinary cucumbers bitter and stop them setting fruit. In Phoenix, in Atlanta, in southern Spain, in southern Italy, this is the cucumber to grow when summer hits hard. The fruit grow up to a meter long. The skin is thin enough that you don't need to peel them. and the flesh stays crisp and sweet even in heat that would ruin a market more. If you've given up on cucumbers because every summer your vines collapse by August, plant Armenian cucumber instead. Number 8 is Swiss chard. Chard appeared on the shade list earlier, and it appears here for the same reason. It's one of the few leafy greens that genuinely handles heat without bolting. Beta vulgaris subspecies Cycla has Mediterranean roots, and Mediterranean roots mean it evolved with hot, dry summers. Where spinach gives up at the first hot day, chard keeps producing tender leaves into August and September. Rainbow varieties, bright lights, Ford hook giant, all of them tough, all of them productive, all of them happy in conditions that would finish most other greens. Harvest the outer leaves, leave the center alone, and one planting feeds a household for months. Number 9 is Malabar spinach. This is the plant most gardeners discover by accident, and then never grow without again. Bacella alba and Bacella rubra, depending on whether you want the green or the red stem type. It's not botanically related to spinach at all. It's a tropical climbing vine from South Asia. Where true spinach bolts in the first warm week of June, Malabar spinach is just getting started. Give it a trellis, a stake, anything tall, and it will climb 3 meters by August. The leaves are thick, glossy, slightly mucilaginous when cooked, closer in texture to a tender okra than to true spinach, with a mild, almost citrusy flavor. Use the young leaves raw in salads. Cook the older ones in soup, in dal, in stir-fry. In the kind of heat where ordinary spinach is impossible, this plant fills the gap entirely. Number 10 is the one most gardeners have never heard of, and it might be the most useful of all. Number 10 is New Zealand spinach. Tetragonia tetragonioides, native to the coastal beaches of New Zealand, Australia, and parts of southern Chile. Captain Cook's crew is said to have brought it back to England in the 1770s after eating it to prevent scurvy on the voyage home, and it spread quickly through European gardens because it solved one specific, persistent problem. Fresh greens in midsummer when nothing else would grow. Like Malabar spinach, this isn't true spinach. It's a different plant family entirely, more closely related to ice plant than to anything in the kale or chard lineage. But the leaves cook down almost identically to real spinach. And the flavor is mild, slightly succulent, more substantial than the original. Where Spinachia oleracea bolts at the first hot week of June, New Zealand spinach is just beginning to produce. It spreads as a low, sprawling plant about 30 centimeters tall and a meter across, throwing out new tips constantly. You harvest by pinching the young growing tips, the top 3 or 4 inches of each stem, and the plant responds by branching out and producing more. One honest note: the leaves contain oxalates like true spinach, chard, and beet greens. Eating them raw in small amounts is fine, but if you're cooking large servings, a quick blanch in boiling water for 30 seconds, then a rinse removes most of the oxalate and improves the texture. This is the same approach traditional cooks have used with spinach family greens for centuries. The Royal Horticultural Society notes this clearly in its growing guides. Yeah, and so that's the 10. Okra from West Africa, eggplant from India, peppers from South America, sweet potato from Central America, yardlong bean and Malabar spinach from tropical Asia, cowpea from West Africa again, Armenian cucumber from the Eastern Mediterranean, Swiss chard from the Mediterranean, New Zealand spinach from the Pacific. Trace the lines on a map and the pattern is obvious. Every one of these crops evolved in a part of the world where 40-degree summers were ordinary. Plant them in your garden, and they bring that resilience with them. Before I let you go, 2 practical points that decide whether these crops actually thrive or just survive in your garden. The first is water. Heat-loving plants are not the same as drought-loving plants. Most of the crops on this list, okra, eggplant, peppers, sweet potato, yard-long bean, cucumber, The spinach alternatives want consistent moisture down where their roots are feeding. The mistake most gardeners make in heat is shallow daily watering, which keeps the surface wet but the deep soil bone dry. Water deeply, twice a week, early in the morning. Soak the root zone. Then let the top inch dry out before the next watering. Roots follow water down. Deep watering builds drought-resistant plants. Shallow watering builds plants that collapse the first time you skip a day. The second is mulch. A 4-inch layer of straw, dried grass clippings, shredded leaves, or wood chips on the soil surface around your plants will lower the soil temperature by 5 to 10 degrees Celsius in peak summer. Cooperative extension trials across the southern United States have documented this consistently. The roots stay cooler, moisture stays in, weeds stop competing. The difference between a mulched and an unmulched bed in August is the difference between a productive garden and a struggling one. Mulch matters more in heat than at any other time of year. And one more thing, worth saying plainly. Even the heat-loving crops on this list benefit from afternoon shade during the most extreme weeks. The days when the temperature climbs past 38 Celsius, 100 Fahrenheit, and stays there. A simple length of 30% shade cloth, the kind you can buy at any garden center or order online, draped over a frame above the bed from noon to 5 in the afternoon, will protect even the toughest plant from genuinely damaging heat. It's not weakness to provide that protection. It's how commercial growers in Texas, Arizona, southern Spain, and southern Italy have grown vegetables through extreme summers for decades. The point of all of this isn't to fight summer. It's to stop using the wrong plants for the conditions you actually have. The old advice was written for a climate that no longer exists in most of America and much of Europe. Plant what evolved for heat. Water it deeply. Mulch the soil. Throw shade over the worst afternoons. And your summer garden stops being the season you survive and starts being the season your kitchen is fullest. If something in this video changed how you'll look at your garden next month, if you've got a patch you were planning to write off for July and August, and you're thinking now about putting okra or sweet potato or New Zealand spinach in there instead, drop the word grow in the comments. I read them. It tells me you're going to use the hottest weeks of the year instead of waiting them out. And it helps the channel reach the next gardener who's been quietly losing crop after crop to heat they could have planned around. Hit the like button while you're there. Not for me. For the next person who's about to plant lettuce in late June and doesn't yet know there's a better way to spend that bed. I'll see you in the next